As the last wisps of sunlight succumbed to the vast expanse of the Mongolian steppes, a sense of foreboding settled over the encampment of the Great Khan, like a shroud cast over the land itself, suffocating all in its grasp. It was a feeling that had become all too familiar to Temujin, the trusted companion and blood brother of Genghis Khan, a man whose unyielding ambition had forged an empire from the scattered tribes of the East, and whose unwavering resolve had earned him the reverence and fear of his people. Yet, on this fateful evening, as the stars began to twinkle like diamonds scattered across the velvet sky, Temujin's heart was heavy with a secret, one that threatened to upend the very foundations of their unbreakable bond and plunge the empire into chaos. The air was alive with the smell of smoke and sweat, the sound of clanging steel and the murmur of hushed conversations as the warriors of the Khan's guard gathered around the fire, their faces illuminated by the flickering flames, their eyes gleaming with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. Temujin, his eyes fixed on the figure of Genghis Khan, who sat cross-legged on a pile of plush furs, his piercing gaze seeming to bore into the very soul of the night, felt a pang of nostalgia wash over him, as he recalled the countless battles they had fought side by side, the victories they had won, and the empires they had conquered. "My brother, my friend," Genghis Khan said, his voice low and gravelly, like the rumble of thunder on a summer's day. "What troubles you? Your eyes seem to hold a secret, and your heart is heavy with the weight of the world." Temujin hesitated, his mind racing with the words he had been wanting to speak but dare not utter. "It is nothing, my Khan," he replied, his voice barely above a whisper, like the gentle lapping of waves on the shore. "Just the weight of our campaigns, the endless battles, the constant struggle to maintain our grip on the empire." Genghis Khan's gaze narrowed, his eyes glinting like polished steel in the firelight. "I sense that there is more to it than that, Temujin," he said, his voice dripping with an unspoken warning. "You have been my brother, my friend, my confidant for many years. I know you too well to be deceived by your words. Tell me, what is it that truly troubles you?" Temujin felt a cold sweat break out on his brow as he realized that the Khan had seen through his deception. He knew that he had to tread carefully lest he arouse the Khan's suspicions and seal his own fate. It is the cost of our conquests, my Khan," Temujin stammered, trying to choose his words with care. "The bloodshed, the suffering, the endless wars. I fear that we have lost sight of what is truly important, that we have become consumed by our own ambition." Genghis Khan's expression darkened, his face twisted in a scowl, like a thunderstorm gathering on the horizon. "You doubt my vision, Temujin," he growled, his voice low and menacing. "You question my judgment?" Temujin felt a shiver run down his spine as he realized that he had gone too far. He knew that he had to retreat, to placate the Khan's anger, lest he suffer the consequences. "No, my Khan," he said, his voice trembling, like a leaf in an autumn breeze. I merely wish to see our people at peace, to see our empire prosper, without the need for constant war and bloodshed." The Khan's gaze lingered on Temujin, his eyes boring into his very soul, as if searching for any sign of treachery. Then, with a sudden movement, he turned away, his attention drawn to one of his guards, who stood waiting at the edge of the firelight. "Leave me," he growled, his voice dismissive, like a wave washing over the shore. "I would speak with my generals and plan our next campaign." As Temujin rose to his feet and backed away from the fire, he felt a sense of relief wash over him, like a cool breeze on a summer's day. He knew that he had escaped the Khan's wrath for the moment, but he also knew that he had not seen the last of this conversation. The seeds of doubt had been sown, and he could only wait and see how they would germinate. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks turned into months. As Temujin waited for the perfect moment to strike, he knew that the Khan's guard was strong, and that the Khan himself was a formidable warrior, but he also knew that he had the element of surprise on his side. He had been gathering a small group of trusted allies, men who shared his desire for change and who were willing to risk everything to bring it about. The day of the assassination was set, a day that would change the course of history, a day that would bring about a new era or plunge the empire into chaos. Temujin's heart was racing with anticipation as he waited for the signal that would set the wheels in motion and seal the fate of Genghis Khan. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the steppes, Temujin saw the mysterious figure, who had set him on this path. "It is time," the figure whispered, his voice like a snake slithering through the grass. "The Khan is alone, and his guard is down. This is our chance." Temujin nodded, his heart pounding in his chest, like a drum beating out a rhythm of death. He drew his dagger and followed the figure as they made their way to the Khan's tent. The air was thick with tension, like a storm about to break, as they approached the entrance. Suddenly, the figure pushed open the flap and Temujin stepped inside, his dagger at the ready. The Khan was sitting on a pile of furs, his eyes fixed on a map spread out before him. He looked up as Temujin entered, and their eyes met, like two warriors clashing in battle. "You," the Khan growled, his voice low and menacing. "I should have known. You have been a traitor from the start." Temujin smiled, a cold, calculating smile. "I am not a traitor, my Khan," he said, his voice dripping with venom. "I am a liberator, and you, my Khan, are a tyrant who has ruled with an iron fist and brought nothing but suffering and bloodshed to our people." The Khan's face twisted in rage as he launched himself at Temujin, his sword flashing in the dim light of the tent. Temujin dodged and struck, his dagger sinking deep into the Khan's chest. The Khan cried out in pain and shock as he stumbled backwards, his sword falling from his grasp. But Temujin was not finished. He struck again and again, his dagger rising and falling like a deadly rhythm. The Khan's cries grew weaker, his body slumping to the ground like a tree felled by a mighty wind. And then it was over. The Khan lay still, his eyes frozen in a permanent stare, his body cold and lifeless. Temujin stood over him, his chest heaving, his dagger still trembling with the force of his blows. "It is done," he whispered, his voice barely audible, like a sigh on the wind. "The tyrant is dead, and a new era has begun." But as he turned to leave, he heard a shout that echoed across the steppes, like a call to arms. "The Khan is dead," the voice cried. "Temujin has killed the Khan." The camp erupted into chaos as the warriors rushed to the Khan's tent, their swords drawn, their faces twisted in rage and grief. Temujin knew that he had to act fast, to take control of the situation before it was too late. He drew his sword and stood tall, his eyes flashing with defiance. "I have done what needed to be done," he declared, his voice ringing out across the steppes. "The Khan was a tyrant, and he had to be stopped. I am the one who has brought freedom to our people, and I will not be silenced." The warriors hesitated, their eyes fixed on Temujin as they weighed their options. Some of them nodded, their faces set in determination, while others looked on in uncertainty. And then a figure emerged from the crowd, a figure who had been watching the scene unfold with a calculating gaze. "I am with Temujin," the figure declared, his voice firm like a rock. "I believe in what he has done, and I will stand by him to the end." The figure was a young warrior, a warrior who had been a loyal follower of the Khan, but who had also been secretly working with Temujin to bring about the Khan's downfall. His name was Jamuka, and he was a man of great courage and great conviction. Together, Temujin and Jamuka stood tall, their swords drawn, their eyes flashing with defiance as they faced the warriors who had gathered to avenge the Khan's death. The air was thick with tension, like a storm about to break, as the two men waited to see what would happen next. "I will not back down," Temujin declared, his voice ringing out across the steppes. "I will not be intimidated. I have done what needed to be done, and I will see it through to the end." The warriors hesitated, their eyes fixed on Temujin as they weighed their options. And then, slowly, they began to nod, their faces set in determination. "We are with you, Temujin," one of them said, his voice firm like a rock. "We will stand by you, and we will fight for you, to the end." And with that, the tide of the battle turned, as the warriors who had gathered to avenge the Khan's death began to rally behind Temujin and Jamuka. The two men stood tall, their swords drawn, their eyes flashing with defiance as they faced the future with courage and determination. The fate of the empire and the fate of Temujin hung in the balance like a sword suspended over the neck of a condemned man. The die had been cast, and there was no turning back. The question was, what lay ahead? Only time would tell. As the days turned into weeks, and the weeks turned into months, the empire began to take shape, like a puzzle, with the pieces falling into place. The new leader, a just and fair and wise man, ruled with an iron fist but a gentle touch, like a mother guiding her child. The people prospered, and the empire flourished like a garden in the springtime. And Temujin, the man who had once been a loyal companion and a trusted friend of Genghis Khan, stood by the side of the new leader like a rock, a foundation upon which the empire was built. He had played a crucial role in the assassination of the Khan, and he had helped to shape the new empire like a sculptor shaping clay. But as he looked out over the steppes, he knew that he would never be able to go back to the way things were before. He had crossed a threshold, and there was no turning back. He had become a part of something much bigger than himself, something that would change the course of history. The wind whispered secrets in his ear of the past and the present and the future. The stars twinkled like diamonds in the sky, and the moon cast a silver glow over the steppes. And Temujin knew that he had found his place in the world, a place where he could make a difference, a place where he could leave his mark on the world. "I am proud of what we have accomplished," Jamuka said, his voice filled with emotion as he stood beside Temujin, looking out over the steppes. "We have brought freedom and justice to our people. We have created a new empire, an empire that will last for generations to come." Temujin nodded, his eyes shining with tears of joy and sadness. "We have done what needed to be done," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We have changed the course of history, and we have found our place in the world." The two men walked on into the sunset, their hearts filled with hope and their spirits renewed. They knew that they had created something special, something that would last for generations to come. And they knew that they would always stand together as friends and as brothers, no matter what the future held.